Okay, so please, everyone turn your cameras on and we will begin. Okay, so this is an advanced class, right? So I'm hopefully you guys have all been on CMAsnap and run a couple of reports. If you haven't done that, I do a webinar on Wednesdays for new users, and I can show you how to authorize your MLS data sets and all that sort of thing, and then walk you through doing your first report. But since this is a mastery series that we're starting, the first thing we're going to start on is adjustments, and this is going to be fairly rudimentary. But the idea is that I want to explain what our process is for handling adjustments, and then show you how it works in CMAsnap, and then encourage you guys to go and hopefully do a bunch of CMAs. Because once you listen, the more you do them, and you ask some of my OGs like Charlie. I mean, he's been around forever. you know, Although I'm probably older than you, but anyway. So
You're not older than me.
I don't know. I don't know. How old are you?
75. You got me?
No, I was gonna say finally somebody is older than me.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No. So you could ask him. I mean, I'm sure that he can knock out 20 CMAs in an hour. And that's what the program is designed to be able to do, is just take a new realtor and teach them how to do a CMA properly, or let a seasoned realtor that already knows what they're doing execute on their vision like 10 times faster. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to dive into it. So yeah, so like I said, we're doing this mastery series, and the idea is that we're gonna do them every other Thursday, and same time, and we'll have a different topic, often different topics. So we'll probably have 4 or 5 classes that we'll do. We'll do an adjustments class. The next one will be on comp selection, and then after that, we're going to start working on marketing and things like that, and then we'll do the round robin, right? We'll start them all over. So the first thing I want to do is talk to you, about who I am and where this all came from. So my name's Tom Cunningham. I've been a broker for 17 years. I started doing broker price opinions in 2012, and they took too long. And so this whole thing started with me trying to figure out how to take a 2-hour broker price opinion process and turn it into, something much less than that. And so the first thing I did was I started hiring appraisers to help me figure out what the adjustment sets were, because that was the hardest part of being able to, speed things up, was trying to figure out how to do the math quicker and what the math actually was. And so the two guys here on the left are Dan and Steve. They're two appraisers that are on our advisory board. We have another one in Dallas and another one in Houston. And we pay attention. We redo our adjustments, every 6 months for sure. But if something comes up and if the market changes, then we're small enough to where we can pivot pretty quickly, right? But the main thing about your adjustments is they have to be defensible. You have to have some sort of method behind them. And the other thing too is the CMA is not an appraisal. Now, we use appraisal methodology and we use broker price opinion methodology, but it's not the same as an opinion of value that's been produced by a licensed real estate appraiser using the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. But we do our best to stay close to the methodology so that you guys can have accurate numbers, right? So we rely on a couple of things, right? So the first thing that we rely on is the principle of substitution and the principle of contribution. Okay, so the principle of substitution says that a buyer will not pay more than the cost of acquiring an equally desirable substitute property with a similar utility, right? So making adjustments is accounting for the differences essentially that substitutes each comp for the other and for the subject property, right? Here's our approach, right? So let's say you have a subject property, all right? And you're looking for comps, right? You want the best comps you can find. So in a perfect world, right, you're going to get perfect comps. But in the real world, what usually happens is you get something more like this, right? And so that's why we have to make adjustments, right? We have to take 2 apples and 2 oranges and make them into an apple and an orange, right? So we're just trying to combine, where we're at and try to make changes for the differences. All right. So
Hey,
our
Tom.
Yeah.
We're seeing your next animation slide, so we're not getting the full view of the slide you're showing us. I wonder if you might be able to fix that. That's the right way now.
That's the right way. Okay, fine. Okay, so here's our approach to adjustments, right? So the definition of adjustment is a value estimate used to equalize differences, right? And so you always are comparing your comp to your subjects. So the things that you're gonna, make adjustments for are like size differences and lot and location and, condition and age and that sort of thing. And so the way that lines up in real estate is, right? You got your subject property and you got all three comps, right? So comp number one is going to be something, and comp number two is going to be something else. So in this case, comp number one is 4 years older, right? And it's 165 square feet bigger, and it's the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms, but comp number one has an extra or is missing a half bath, right? So those are the things that we're going to make adjustments on, right? And so then we use the principal contribution. Okay, so the principal contribution says that the value of any feature or improvement to a property is measured by how much it contributes to the property's overall market value, but not what it costs to add. Okay, so an example, the example that I always use is, you're talking to a listing client, and a listing client says, "Hey, we just put on a new roof," and you go, "Right on, you're expected to have a roof, so that's good." You're not necessarily going to get any more money for a roof because you're expected to have a roof. Oh, well, we spent 50 grand on the floors and they look fantastic. How long ago did you do that? Oh, well, we did it a year ago. Okay, well, they're not worth 50 grand anymore because they've been walked on for a year, right? So that's sort of the idea. And so then you have to evaluate all the comps, right? You have to account for the differences and then you have to assign some sort of value. Okay, so a lot of people use the WAG method. Does anyone here know what the WAG method is? Anybody? Nobody? Man, where are you guys from? The WAG method is wild ass guess, right? And so we don't want you to do that, right? We want to have, something that you can rely on that is defensible and uses recognized methodology. Okay. So we apply the principle of contribution and we do it in percentages of contributory value. That's just our approach. There's a bunch of different places that you can go to get adjustments. You can do the long way is called paired sales analysis. And the idea there is, you take one house that sold for $300,000 that doesn't have a pool, and you take another house that sold for $325,000 that does have a pool. Therefore, ergo, the value of the pool is $25,000, right? So you can go and do that, right? That's a very tedious process if you're doing it manually in the MLS. And the other thing you do is just get appraiser guidance. I mean, that's what we did, right? So I've been contracting appraisers since 2012, and trying to figure out how I can make an adjustment set that would be a good baseline adjustment to get you, in the ballpark, right? Because we're not appraisers, right? These CMAs can't be used for lending. They can't be used for legal documents. They're simply an opinion of value that's given by a real estate professional. And the way that we handle it is we have one set of adjustments that are static, right? And they're based on price point. And then we have another set of adjustments that are based on a percentage of contributory value. So, for example, in this case, we're giving 6% for a pool, for example, right? So if you walk out into the guy's backyard and it looks like Fiesta, Texas, then you can certainly change the, 6%. If it comes out to 30 grand, you can certainly change it easily to 100, right? And this is the square footage adjustment that we use, and it's fairly standard, okay? And this is kind of what it looks like on paper. And we apply CIA CBS. Anybody know what CIA CBS stands for? Okay, all right. So CIA CBS stands for if the comp is inferior, you add, and if the comp is better, you subtract. Okay, so if your subject property is 2,000 square feet, okay, and your comp is 400 square feet, right, then the comp is better. So that's comp number one. So we're going to do the math here. So subject property is 2,000 square feet. The comp is 2,400 square feet. So the comp is 400 square feet bigger. So there's a 400 square foot difference. And let's say, for example, that the average sale price of the comp selected for pricing is $333 a foot. Right, so we're using an adjustment factor of 30% because typically that's what appraisers do, 25 to 30% depending on the market. Right now we're at 30%. So the factor is 30% and the adjustment would be $100. So the math would be $400, which is the difference between the square footage, times 100, which is the gross living area adjustment, equals 40,000. And because the comp is better, we're going to subtract. So the adjustment to the comp is negative $40,000. That's the simple math. And you can absolutely, and I'm happy to share our pricing guidance, our adjustment guidance with you. And I'll put it in the chat at the end of the call. And you can absolutely go in here and get in the MLS, and you can do all this manually for free. If you have that kind of time, that's how I started doing it, and that's actually one of the reasons that was a catalyst for me, coming up with this idea in the first place. It just took too long, right? So, practically speaking, right? Let's say your subject has a pool and your comp doesn't. Well, you have to add the value of the pool to the comp. Okay. And if the comp has a pool and the subject doesn't, then you have to subtract the value of the pool from the comp. Pretty simple, right? So best practices, and we're going to jump into the app in just a second, but best practices are, the first thing is you got to be consistent. One of the things that I always had a problem with was not being able to remember necessarily what calculation I used on comp number 1 when I'm doing comp number 3 or 4, right? So you have to be consistent, and you don't want to double adjust. I get people who ask me all the time, where's my adjustments for bedrooms? We handle bedrooms in the square footage, right? And if you make an adjustment for a bedroom and an adjustment for square footage, then appraisers call that double dipping, and you don't want to do that, right? So the other thing too is avoiding adjustments without support. You can walk into somebody's house and you can say, oh, that's a fantastic looking fireplace. I think it should be $75,000. There's no basis in that. You can make up any number you want. And in CMAsnap, just like any other program that has user input, you can put in whatever numbers you want, but you just want to make sure that you can support what you're saying, right? And then be able to explain it in your report, right? So we'll talk about all those things, in this class and coming classes. So the biggest mistake that I see is over adjusting. Depends on the appraiser you talk to, of course, but if you talk to an appraiser, if you have to make one adjustment that's more than 10% of the value, you need to go find another comp. So over adjusting is a big issue. The other thing too is trying to use appraiser level precision. We're not appraisers, man. We're realtors. We're trying to get somebody to sign on the line that is dotted on a listing agreement or on a contract or on a purchase offer or on an amendment or on a price reduction or whatever. That's what we do. We are not building comprehensive opinions of value that can be used in legal proceedings or in lending, right? And so when I hear, I've heard people say, oh, well, that house over there is a D.R. Horton and this one here is a Ryland. And, I think that there's a difference in this and that. Appraisers are likely not going to get into all of that. And they're also likely not going to get into, I've had people say, well, this tile is, a better color than that tile. So there's an upgrade. And I was like, nope, no upgrade for that. So don't try to get too forensic in it. We're just trying to get into baseline so that you can get yourself into a conversation so that you can, get your clients under contract or under a listing agreement and go make some money. So the other thing is ignoring location nuances. Okay, so there's a thing in appraisal methodology. It's called external obsolescence. We'll talk. We have that adjustment in the app. So external obsolescence, my house is next door to a Walmart parking lot, right? This house is next door to a 24-hour grocery store, right? It's your property is abutted next to another property that's used for a different purpose, right? And so little nuances like that make a difference. If you've got a house that, I don't know about you guys, but power lines is a big deal for me, right? I could never buy a house that had big power lines going right across my backyard. That's external obsolescence. And so you don't want to ignore those types of things. Relying solely on software. I can do a CMA on a house. I can have every reason in the world to believe that house is going to sell at $400,000. But when I go over to the listing appointment and I walk in the door for the first time, and my first words are, how many cats do you have? You can't rely just on the software. You have to be the local market expert. I'm just trying to give you the tools to be able to let you execute on your job a lot faster. you have to think about these things, but what we did was we built this app that, so that it would grease the wheels so that you could put your spin and your local market knowledge into play a lot faster. And then the other thing that I would say, and I would beg all of you, is use the app, get on there and run 20 CMAs. I mean, you literally, and I'll show you in a second, you literally can run 20 CMAs in an hour. Go run everybody on your street. Get practice. I've seen people that only do a CMA when they're ready to write an offer. Man, if you go through your neighborhood, you will find reasons to do CMAs and send them to people. And you send out 30 or 40 CMAs a month. Sooner or later, somebody's going to call you and say, "Hey, thanks for sending this. This is pretty cool." And then you're off to the races, right? And then the other thing too is, and this is kind of what the whole point of the way that we lay things out in the app is, we want you to be able to document your reasoning. We're going to make it super simple for you to compare the differences between the properties, and that's it. So that's really the lead up. And now I'm going to jump into the app, and we're going to look at a live example. First of all, before I do that, anybody have any questions?
A question.
Uh-huh.
So I have a listing that's getting ready to go active towards the end of this month. And when I did the CMA and I did this one through Snap, everything came out great. But what you were just talking about, when you walk into a house and you go, how many cats do you have? This particular home has pieces of the ceiling and sheetrock cut out because they've had to replace plumbing pipes. And so we're going active with those things not being repaired. I mean, how do you really do a comparable when you have something like that going on?
I'll show you right now. All right, hold on a second. Let's just run that sucker and see what happens. Okay, I'm listed for Dorify. Okay, what's the address?
128 Chris Court.
See all what?
Chris, like CHRIS Court.
Oh, sorry. HRIS, okay.
And it's Garner, North Carolina.
Garner, Chris Court. Is that right?
Yes.
We'll see if it comes up in the drop down. Garner NC. Okay, so now this property, have you got pictures in here yet?
I do not.
Okay,
But,
so
I mean, you can't really see the
old
house.
listing. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really see the house from the picture that's online.
Okay, so listen, if this were a tax record, well, actually, let's just look at it here. Okay, so do you know if these numbers are accurate? Is it on an acre, 1.3 acres, at 1,800 square feet? Is that all correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All that's correct, right?
Yes,
All right, so what you're gonna do is, have you already tried to run this thing on CMAsnap?
I have.
Okay. All right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna go in here to the property form so you pull it up right there, right? Click create report, and then you're gonna go on the property form, make sure all this stuff is correctamundo, and then you're gonna click on submit. And we'll see what how many, does it got a garage?
Yeah, it has a one car garage. I can't remember. It's got so much furniture in there. I can't remember the measurement.
Okay. No worries. Okay. So you were asking how you make an adjustment for a hole in the ceiling.
Yeah, it's multiples where the plumber came in and literally cut like rectangles.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so here's the way that. Okay, so when I do these webinars and I give these classes, I want you guys to just understand that I'm Tom the realtor, right? I've been a broker for 17 years. I speak in terms of the way that I do things. There's not necessarily the only way to do things. It's just the way that I do things. And so you guys make this business your own and do what feels right to you. So as I'm speaking extemporaneously here, just take it with a grain of salt that this is Tom the realtor and my opinions are my opinions, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the first one right on the same street. Okay, so let's go take a peek at the condition of this one. Nice looking house. All right. Is that carpet? That is carpet. Okay, so carpet on the thing. I don't see any holes in the ceiling. Is that butcher block? Can you tell? Looks like butcher block.
Yeah,
You
that's
guys
butcher
take your
block.
microphones off and chime in here because I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay. All right. So watch this. Okay. So Dorothy, would you say that this is dramatically in better shape than yours is?
Yes.
Okay. Watch this. All right. So, all right, comp number one, I'm going to go over here to the adjustments and I can click into here and I'm going to do a full upgrade. So did they have granite and I mean nice floors and all that stuff, or is it just the holes in the ceiling? Is that the only problem?
No, I mean the carpet is
Okay,
it's dated, it needs replaced.
no problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a negative adjustment. And so in this price point, our full upgrade condition adjustment is 32 grand. I'm going to make that a negative adjustment because this one is better than my subject property. That's just our number. So let me ask you this, Dorothy. Is there anything in your listing that can't be cured with $32,000?
Probably not.
That's the way I look at things, right? If I'm looking at these adjustments, right? That's a significantly bigger lot, right? That's a decent price for a bathroom. But the upgrades when I'm trying to evaluate an upgrade adjustment, that's the way I do it. I mean, I've flipped a few houses and I've done some rehabs and all that stuff, and I have a decent feel for being able to look around and it's under 50, over 50, that kind of thing. So just look at it and look around and $30,000 goes a long way in an 1,800 square foot house, So that's how we handle that. And then in here, same drill over here. We might have another adjustment or two to make over here. Big old yard. Okay, so let's do this one real quick. So I'm going to go into adjustments and I'm going to make a conditional adjustment for full upgrade. I'm going to make that a minus. I'm going to click submit. And then, I don't know how this thing got over here. I'm going to do the same thing. Oh, wait a minute. There you go. Okay, so, well, let's make sure we're good.
Do you not have any issues comparing one-story houses to two-story houses? Or is that an adjustment as well?
Yeah, well, I have an adjustment for it. And it kind of depends. I mean, the way that Tom the realtor does it, if the master bedroom is on the first floor, I don't make an adjustment. If this is just me personally. If all the bedrooms are upstairs, then I do make an adjustment. And I think my adjustment set for stories is 1.5. I'm not sure here. Hold on. Let's see, hold on. We have a 1.5, 1.5. Personally, I don't really think that if 1.5 stories is ridiculous, man. It's either 1 story or 2 story. Tom the realtor speaking. Okay, so let's make a stories adjustment on this one just to see where we're at here. So I'm going to go in here, and that's a 1 story for sure. We go down here to stories, and my adjustment is minus 5 grand because typically a 1 story is more attractive than a 2 story. But like I said, I only make the adjustment if the master bedroom is downstairs. Or excuse me, if the master bedroom is downstairs, then I don't typically make an adjustment for stories. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now that we've made condition adjustments, just to show you how that whole thing pans out, I probably would select different comps for 2 and 3 if they're available. That's actually going to be the next class we're going to do. We're going to do it on comp selection, but that's next week's class, right? And then when you're ready to share your report, I don't know if you guys have seen all this, but we made a couple of changes to the UI where when you're getting ready to share the report, you know how you used to be able to block out the sales price? That actually lives in the edit button now. Okay. And you can write a note to your client. You can override the values, which I do not recommend you doing. We actually built that for a property manager because it's a little different for leases. And then if you haven't walked into the house yet, and Dorothy, this might not be a bad call for you. Or you've been in the house, right, Dorothy?
Yes.
Okay. So I was going to say, if you're getting ready to go on a listing appointment, or if you're going to send a report out to someone that you haven't seen the house yet, it's a good idea to click that show sales price toggle right there in the edit button on the share menu. And then that way you blur out your sales price and you don't get yourself into a bind. If you walk in there and suddenly you're hit in the face with, litter box smells. And then you guys already know all about the trends in the stats page, I assume. And then our long report now is great for high resolution print. Charlie can tell you. Charlie's been around so long. Okay, how long has Charlie been here? Charlie's been around so long that when he first started, we had a one-page report, and you had to go through like 3 or 4 different things to get a price. So I don't know. I mean, you've been with 5, 6 years, 7 years, maybe.
When did you first start CMAsnap?
We took our first customer in January 2016.
It was right around that time when you were at the Board of Realtors
Yeah.
and came in soccer. Chad and Thomas was doing a class, and you came in as for one of the breaks.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty new at the time.
It was definitely new. And I'll tell you something, not to get off on too much of a tangent here, but that was back in the days when I was super cocky and I'd walk into these GRI classes with a phone and I go, okay, somebody give me an address. And invariably somebody would give me like a geodesic dome out in the middle of nowhere, and I was like, okay, here's the blue snow cone. That's what we call it. My dad's ski house. Anyway, so that pretty much concludes the class. You got, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat box. So our adjustments live right here. Okay, so on the dashboard, under the picture, there's a little plus minus button, and if you push that, right, so these are the system selected adjustments. These are the ones that the system made automatically, and you can either edit these if you don't feel good about them. I mean, let's say that pool number 1 was built into limestone. It looked like Fiesta, Texas. You can certainly change this to $75,000 or whatever you need it to be, right? So this is not a black box. This is a thing that tees you up to be able to get the stuff done faster, but still have control. Okay, so if there's something that needs to be adjusted for besides that, if you click into the description, you just click on the green plus sign right there and then click into the description. We have a whole drop down of things that are pre-programmed, and then some of them are not pre-programmed, and it's for you to decide, right? And so we make adjustments based on static differences. We make adjustments based on things that you can see and touch and you can measure, right? So how much is a sunset worth? I don't know. I mean, my wife and I used to go dream building and go to open houses of these, big houses that we couldn't afford when we were back in the day when we were first dating, and we go, after church. And I remember going to this house in Lakeway, and it had a beautiful terrace and the sun was going down. And I was like, my God, where's the margarita machine? And my wife was just like, I can't even believe what the utilities in this place must be like in August, right? So one man's trash is another man's treasure. And for that reason, we have some stuff that you have to define the value on. But most of it's premium. Huh?
Smart wife.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely married up. Okay, so for example, we were looking at, here's a view, right? There's a view adjustment. All right, and we have stuff for things like I don't know. We do basements if you guys are in a basement area, and then detached quarters. I mean, we have a whole drop down worth of things, and I highly encourage you to play around with those. Okay, the one thing I want to do is point out that when the system makes an adjustment, all right, it knows whether it's a positive or negative adjustment. If you add something over here, then you have to tell it, what the value, whether that doesn't have a basement, so there ain't no carport. Okay, you have to tell it what the value, whether it's a positive or negative, right? So if this is improved over our subject property, then you just click on that button and turn it into a negative number. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay, so let's talk to, was it Dorothy that you had a problem with a property? Yo, Dorothy.
Yeah. Yes.